All right, let's stay on this marginal analysis train for a little bit longer. Let's take a look at some everyday decisions that consumers and producers need to make in order to hopefully understand marginal analysis a little bit better. So first, let's start with the consumer. So an everyday choice, how many slices of pizza do I want to eat? So I have a picture there of a couple pizzas that I made on my smoker. Pretty good stuff. There's a buffalo chicken pizza there. And then there's a barbecue pulled pork pizza sitting right there as well. So that's pulled pork that I smoked for about 15 hours on my smoker. And then there's a little bit of blue cheese on there. There's some peppers on there, some barbecue. So, very good stuff, okay? So I'm a big fan of food, as you can tell. And pizza certainly falls under food. So how many slices of pizza do you want to eat? As a consumer, that's an everyday choice, right? So you're hungry, you order a pizza, you have it delivered to your house, maybe some sausage and peppers on there, Chicago style, all right? Well, that first pizza that you bite into, there's going to be a very big increase in your satisfaction level. You're starving, you're hungry. The flavors are all very fresh in your mouth. So you take a bite, you close your eyes, there's that ratatouille style explosion of flavor in your head. Oh, it's delicious. That is a really big increase in your satisfaction level. Now, what's your cost of eating pizza? Well, your cost of eating pizza is you start to get full, you start to feel uncomfortable maybe there's a little heartburn involved there, right? But for the first slice of pizza, the benefit is way greater than the cost. Now you move on to that second slice of pizza. You bite into it. You're still hungry, right? But you're not as hungry as with the first slice. The flavors, they're still pretty fresh in your mouth, but not as fresh as with that first slice. What I'm describing to you here is what we call the diminishing marginal utility of consumption. That's an important concept to understand when you're looking at a consumer's choice, when you're looking at a consumer doing a marginal analysis. What that concept tells us is the more you have of something, the less satisfaction one more unit of that product is going to bring you. So you ate your first, you ate your second, no question. The marginal benefit of that second slice was greater than the marginal cost. So you're all the way to that 8 slices of pizza. Usually there's 8 slices in a pizza. Now at this point, you are not hungry at all, right? You can't even taste that anymore. The flavors have saturated your mouth. So you're comparing the marginal benefit of that 8 slice to the marginal cost, which means definitely you're going to feel uncomfortable and you're going to have some heartburn tomorrow. So is the benefit greater than the cost? What's the benefit at this point? Well, maybe your roommate's a mooch. Maybe they knew you were going to order that pizza and they're always doing this to you. They were going to wait around until you got full and ask for a few slices. You're sick of it. So the benefit of that last slice, well, it's really just spite, right? It's to spite your roommate. And that's a sad way to get your satisfaction. That's only a little bit of satisfaction. So you're going to be a good person at there. You're going to stop. You're going to stop at that 7th slice because the marginal cost of eating it is going to be greater than the marginal benefit. And that's what we do as consumers. That's what we do as producers as well. We go along with this marginal analysis. We continue to engage in an activity until we get to a point where one more unit of that activity, one more unit of that product, the cost is going to be greater than the benefit. So here, you're going to give that 8 slice to your roommate. That's an everyday decision that a consumer might make. All right, now let's take a look at a producer's choice, an everyday decision that the producer needs to make. So remember, what is the goal of the producer? To maximize profits. The 2 big decisions that we'll look at in this course is how many workers do I want to hire to maximize my profits, or how many units of capital, so my equipment, my factory machinery, how many units of capital I want to purchase to maximize my profits. Here, let's take a look at the labor decision. How many workers do I need to hire in order to maximize my profits? So here, just like we had diminishing marginal utility of consumption, what we're going to see on the production side is diminishing marginal productivity. What that tells me here as far as labor goes, the more workers that I hire, the more production I'm going to get out of them. But the smaller the increases in production for each worker that I hire. So here we're fixing the capital, okay? We're fixing the machines and the equipment and we're hiring more workers. So with each worker that I hire, the equipment gets used more often, so production goes up. But if I fix the number of machines, what's going to happen is the workers are going to have to share the machines. That means we're going to have logistical and coordination issues, which are going to cause the increases in production for each worker that I hire to get smaller and smaller and smaller. So here, what I'm showing you, how much revenue I get out of hiring each worker. This is total revenue. But if I'm going to do a marginal analysis, I need to break that down into marginal revenue. So here, the first worker, we have $120,000 in revenue. The second worker, we're up to $230,000 in revenue. But how much additional revenue did that second worker bring in? So here we need to take our revenue and turn it into marginal revenue, and we're going to compare that to our marginal cost. The marginal cost here is just the $60,000 a year we're paying each of our workers. We're just going to have very simple, a flat $60,000 we pay to each of our workers as our wage. That's all that we're going to consider. So how do we solve this problem? Like I said, we have to break this down into margins. So the first worker, we're up to $120,000. The second worker, we're up to $230,000. But what is the difference for that second worker? It's just $110,000. So the first worker, the total was $120,000. We had zero before that first worker. So that first worker, the total equals the marginal revenue. They brought in $120,000. The second worker, we're up to $230,000, but the additional revenue that they brought in was just $110,000. So that third worker, right, we're up to $330,000, but what's the additional revenue? It's just $100,000. So we see this diminishing marginal productivity when we fix the capital and we add workers, production goes up, but due to those logistical and coordination issues of having to share the capital, the size of the increases gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So what we need to do, we need to compare the marginal benefit, which is here the marginal revenue of each worker, to the marginal cost. We just have a flat constant $60,000 for each worker that we hire. The additional cost of each worker is $60,000. So then you go and you compare for each worker the marginal revenue to the marginal cost. So the first worker, we have the $120,000 is greater than the $60,000. You hire that worker. The second worker, the marginal benefit is $110,000. The marginal cost is $60,000. You hire that worker. The third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth worker, the marginal benefit is greater than the marginal cost. So you go through with hiring that worker. Now we take a look at the eighth worker. The marginal benefit from hiring that worker is $50,000. The marginal cost of hiring that worker is $60,000. We don't want that worker, right? This isn't a humanitarian relief aid here. We're hiring workers to make profits. We're not hiring workers for the sake of workers. We are maximizing our profits. So when you get to the point in that increasing incremental cost benefit analysis where that next worker costs you more than they make you, you stop. You don't go through with the activity. You do not hire that eighth worker. You stop at 7 workers. Now with the seventh worker, the marginal benefit equal to marginal cost. Again, that's our indifference point. It doesn't add profit. It doesn't take away from the profit. But at that point for math consistency, we always assume you go through with the activity at the indifference point. So we looked at an everyday decision for the consumer, how many slices of pizza we want to eat, and we looked at an everyday decision for a producer, how many workers do we want to hire? And we went through marginal analysis for both of them where you compare the marginal benefit to the marginal cost. That's going to be a big deal throughout that course. That's something you're going to want to understand is this marginal analysis. Economics is really just this series of repeating marginal analysis.